Throughout history, trenches have symbolized the grim reality of war. From the muddy fields of World War I to the shifting front lines of modern conflicts, these dugouts have always been a place of both protection and despair. Today, in Ukraine, the story repeats itself. Soldiers live, fight, and die in trenches that snake across the landscape, bearing witness to one of the most brutal wars of the 21st century. But these are not merely defensive lines. They are psychological battlefields, where the sound of artillery is matched only by the weight of fear. And nowhere is that fear more visible than in the reactions of Russian troops when they hear a name whispered like a curse: Azov. The war in Ukraine continues to evolve into a brutal and unpredictable struggle, where each passing day writes a new chapter of courage, desperation, and survival. For many, the battlefield is a place of fleeting victories and crushing losses. But inside the trenches carved deep into Ukrainian soil, another story unfolds, one of fear spreading like wildfire among Russian troops. These trenches, once symbols of defense and protection, now feel more like prisons of mud, blood, and terror. At the heart of this fear lies the relentless advance of Ukraine's Azov Brigade, whose presence alone sends shockwaves through enemy lines. For soldiers buried in these dugouts, it is not only bullets and shells they fear, but the psychological weight of knowing that Azov fighters are closing in. This is not just a battle for territory, it is a fight for endurance, morale, and the fragile will to survive. Across the Ukrainian front, Russian trenches stretch for kilometers, twisting like scars across the land. Initially, they were dug to shield soldiers from artillery barrages and drone surveillance. Yet, what was once a sanctuary has transformed into a claustrophobic nightmare. Overhead, the constant buzzing of Ukrainian drones pierces the silence. To the soldiers below, that sound has become the rhythm of death itself, unpredictable, unstoppable, and inescapable. Some drones scout targets, others drop explosives with deadly accuracy, and still others crash headlong into their victims. Each buzz overhead tightens the soldiers' nerves, each shadow cast across the trench walls sparks dread. Whispers travel from one end of the dugout to the other. Azov is coming. For the men trapped inside, those words carry more weight than the explosions that shake the ground. Azov's reputation has already done half the fighting before a single shot is fired. The Azov Brigade, forged through years of relentless combat, is more than a fighting unit. It is a symbol of Ukrainian resistance. Its fighters combine advanced technology with unconventional tactics, making them a nightmare for any entrenched force. Kamikaze drones buzz overhead like hornets, snipers strike unseen from afar, and sudden infantry pushes arrive without warning. Russian troops, huddled in their trenches, are left scrambling to respond. Their rifles feel heavy in their hands, their ammunition finite, their morale slipping further with every passing hour. For many, the real enemy is not the fighters advancing toward them, but the gnawing fear inside their minds. The trenches become suffocating cages where panic spreads faster than any commander's orders. Inside these muddy walls, discipline begins to unravel. Some soldiers bow their heads in desperate prayer, whispering words to a god they had forgotten in peacetime. Others stare blankly, frozen in fear, unable to lift their weapons when ordered. Commanders shout, demanding readiness, but their voices bounce off hollow eyes. Rumors spread like wildfire. Entire platoons wiped out in minutes, reinforcements delayed or destroyed, artillery support running out. Each rumor feels real, each one magnifies the dread of what lies ahead. The presence of Azov does not only control the battlefield, it controls the very thoughts of its opponents. Fear becomes a weapon as devastating as any missile strike. As night descends, the atmosphere in the trenches thickens. The temperature drops, the darkness deepens, and the silence between bombardments becomes unbearable. The only sounds are the faint whirring of drones circling above and the occasional rustle of boots in the nearby woods. Sleep becomes impossible. For those who close their eyes, dreams offer no escape, only visions of ambushes, of being surrounded, of being torn apart by explosions in the dead of night. Men wake in cold sweats, gripping their rifles, unsure if the noise that startled them was real or just in their minds. The trenches, once dug for protection, now resemble open graves waiting for their occupants. Beyond the mud and fear, this unfolding story reveals a greater truth about the shifting momentum of the war. Ukraine's Azov Brigade, along with other units, has mastered not only modern combat, but also psychological warfare. By using fear as a weapon, they weaken their enemy before a single bullet is fired. Every step closer to the Russian lines shakes morale. Every successful drone strike reinforces the image of Azov as an unstoppable force. In this war, numbers and weapons matter less than psychology. The question is not just who has the most firepower, but who has the strongest nerves, the greatest endurance, the will to outlast the other. For those trapped in trenches, this contest feels like a suffocating nightmare that tightens its grip with each passing day. Some soldiers whisper of surrender, others of desertion, but few dare to act. The thought of abandoning their posts terrifies them almost as much as the thought of holding them. Yet every drone overhead, every sniper's bullet, every whisper of Azov is near, pushes them closer to breaking point. What was once a united force begins to fracture. Soldiers no longer look to their commanders for orders. They look to each other for comfort, for reassurance that they are not alone in this hellish waiting game. The fear is contagious, infecting even the most battle-hardened among them. As dawn breaks after a night of torment, the sight that greets them is worse than darkness. The shadows of advancing fighters emerge from the tree line, their movements swift and calculated. Drones swoop closer, circling like vultures. Russian troops grip their rifles tighter, but their hands tremble. The ground shakes under the impact of explosions. Some fight, others freeze, but all know the same truth. Azov has arrived, and with them comes not only the fire of battle, but the weight of fear that has been building for days. In that moment, the trenches are no longer fortifications, they are traps. For many, they will be the last place they ever see. This is not just the story of one clash, but a reflection of the broader war. It is a war where fear has become as lethal as artillery, where the psychological collapse of soldiers can decide battles before they begin, where names like Azov echo through enemy trenches as a weapon in their own right. For those caught inside the mud and shadows, survival is no longer about winning, but about enduring one more hour, one more night, under the weight of dread. And so the images of Russian troops panicking in their trenches tell us more than just the fate of one battle. They reveal the reality of modern warfare, where technology, tactics, and terror intertwine, where soldiers face not only bullets, but the collapse of their own minds, where the trenches themselves become symbols of despair. This is the new face of war in Ukraine, and it is one that will shape the course of this conflict for years to come. This has been Delta History.